Chaco Canyon, settled in the northwest corner of what is now New Mexico, represents some of the greatest remains of Ancestral Pueblo culture. The canyon is littered with over a dozen great houses of masonry and adobe. These large community building projects contain multi-level family dwellings, kivas for religious activities, and plazas for social gatherings. At the peak of Chaco Canyon, the communities and arid region supported several thousand residents, with many more individuals traveling to and through the canyon for trade and pilgrimage. The history of the Ancestral Pueblo and the natural challenge they faced is a story of resilience by means of community interaction and a long tradition of the peoples of the Colorado Basin. The region was first populated by the kivas culture around 10,000 BCE, though by 1000 BCE, the early basket makers had established practices of habitation and pit houses and cultivation of maize, beans, and squash in the arid environment of the North American Southwest. At around 750 CE, the Ancestral Pueblo appeared in the region, denoted by small Pueblo communities. These communities began to grow around 800 CE, with the construction of large Pueblo buildings like Pueblo Bonito and the major junctions of the Chaco Wash. Populations continue to grow, with the abandonment of Sand Canyon and Mesa Verde to the north around 900. A period of great prosperity caused by increased rainfall occurred from 1050 to 1100. Though disaster struck with a drought in 1130, when the recently enlarged population of thousands burdened the now strained environment and its ability to produce local resources. Unable to alter their environment to meet their needs, many left Chaco Canyon and headed north to the Four Corners region of higher elevation and precipitation, such as returning to Mesa Verde, where they continued to build pueblos within cliffs structures. Though 70 years later, drought affected this region as it did Chaco Canyon, necessitating the long-established method of resilience by the Ancestral Pueblo of moving once again. Their descendants dispersed to the Little Colorado River drainage, the Mogollon Highlands, and the Rio Grande Valley. The region of northwest New Mexico would later be repopulated by 1500 once more favorable climate conditions returned. In more recent times, Jose Antonio Vizcarra, the Mexican governor of New Mexico, led the first documented expedition to the canyon in 1823. Series of surveys and archaeological work would continue throughout the rest of the century. In 1901, Richard Wetherill claimed 65 hectares of the Chaco Canyon, including Pueblo Bonito, Pueblo del Arroyo, and Chetro Kettle. The Antiquities Act of 1906, which protects relics and authorizes presidents to establish national monuments, was enacted as a direct cause of this attempt by Wetherill to claim the historical area for his own. 1 year later, it was established as Chaco Canyon National Monument by Theodore Roosevelt on March 11, 1907. In 1980, it was elevated to Chaco Culture National Historical Park and given the designation of a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1987. Today, the park is managed by the National Park Service, with the surrounding land managed by the Bureau of Land Management. It has a visitor center with a museum, information desk, theater, and gift shop. In addition, the park offers a campground and a great place for hiking, biking, and viewing of the stars. The Chaco Night Sky Program, an initiative started in 1991 to view the stars in a region removed from light pollution, built an observatory in 1997. Visit the National Park website for more information and dates to participate in the star parties held there. You may visit the park year-round, with the exception that the facilities are closed on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year. The Ancestral Pueblo inherited foraging and farming strategies, such as selecting where to cultivate for bountiful crops, and were used to temporary fluctuations in climate. Tree ring analysis, known as dendrochronology, has allowed climatologists to estimate the amount of rainfall from 600 to 1300 CE, where the Southwest received between 8 to 11 inches annually. As a desert on the Colorado Plateau, the Chaco region would have had hot summers and warm winters with nightly decreases in temperature. Natural resources surrounding Chaco Canyon consisted of natural springs, wild food plants, small game, sage, and limited cottonwood. Being experts in inhospitable environments, they developed strategies in both their infrastructure and society to meet their needs. Two major droughts, one from 1130 to 1180, and a second one from 1275 to 1299, tested these strategies, ultimately causing the people to move locations as their final strategy for survival. These droughts were caused by the short-term shifts between El Niño and La Niña in the South Pacific. During El Niño, winter precipitations would increase, while summer amounts remained normal. This increase in rain promoted growth of biomass in the surrounding region, though as the climate shifted into La Niña, winter precipitation decreased drastically, while the summer amounts remained normal. The lack of rain caused the recent influx of biomass to dry out, providing fuel for natural fires to sweep across the land. Dendrochronology shows a pattern of fires every 4 to 8 years. To answer why these droughts affected the Ancestral Pueblo so greatly, we must take a closer look at their settlement systems and subsistence practices. Towards the turning of the millennium, Chaco Canyon had become a central hub of travel and cultural identity. As the population increased over time, small groups would break off to create their own settlements in the adjacent area. They lived and farmed as households and retained kinship ties to the adjacent settlements. Though the carrying capacity of the local environment is estimated to support only 5,500 people, upper estimates of the population at Chaco Canyon around 1,300, near 20,000. Great houses were built as community projects requiring collective labor and resource gathering, such as stones and even wood from 100 miles away. In the great houses, food would have been stored as a community cooperation, thus limiting food spoilage by economy of scale, while greater volume has less surface area to rot. In addition, great houses had kivas, which are large holes in the ground covered by logs and adobe to create a room, as well as plazas, which are evidence of religious and social interactions. Such a community required an organization, such as a chieftain, to oversee community projects, conduct cultural rituals, and settle individual disputes of a population so large. To feed this population, both infrastructure and social strategies were relied upon. The main subsistence crop was maize, which they had inherited from their ancestors, the basket makers. The Ancestral Pueblo irrigated Chaco Wash and were experts in choosing soils with moisture-retaining properties. They chose east-facing slopes, which received little direct sunlight, to farm their plots. They refined strands of maize with deep, water-seeking roots, and they dispersed individual gardens throughout an area in an attempt to avoid fluctuating climates and precipitation patterns. In addition, trade networks with descendant and fragmented communities, such as those which sought more land due to population growth at Chaco Canyon, were retained and used, securing Chaco Canyon as a center of trade throughout the region. More than 650 kilometers of paths radiated from the canyon to over 30 settlements, which were important for traders of exotic goods over long distances, or for pilgrims to travel to the canyon for rituals during solstices and other important events. These strategies made Chaco Canyon one of the largest and most successful communities in North America, creating a large population of several thousand by 1100. For the longest time, the Ancestral Pueblo were able to change with the temporary variations between La Niña in El Nino by farming more land, falling back on wild food, and trading with other communities. Though by the 12th century, Chaco Canyon's population increased above the area's resource carrying capacity. At this point, droughts as short as 1 year could strain Chaco Canyon's resource to the brink of collapse, requiring its residents to disperse elsewhere. By 1130, this is exactly what happened. The 50-year drought strained the Chaco Canyon society and their social ties to other communities and their resources. Ancestral Pueblo at Chaco Canyon serves as an example where society will first change locations, seeking better land, in effort to retain their fundamental behaviors and way of life. I first became interested in Chaco Canyon after reading about it in my Introduction to Archaeology class at The Ohio State University. How was it that I had never heard of such a large ancient society in my own country? So I decided I must learn more and visit the canyon myself. I arrived at the turnoff to the park at night and was wary about the long gravel road I was now driving down, though I knew it was Bureau of Land Management land. So I pulled over and slept in the car. The park itself is small compared to other national parks, only having one loop to drive upon. Due to it being December, the park was completely empty, and I had entire great houses which once housed hundreds to myself. There's a great number of Pueblo and other archaeological remains to visit, many being easily accessible with flat terrain and short paths, though there are longer paths for dedicated hikers and casual bicyclists. Not only was I surprised as to how nice the park facilities were, I was greatly surprised by the Pueblos themselves. I was full of excitement as I explored through the remnants of this ancient culture, a culture which could build 5-story buildings in the middle of the desert 1 millennium ago. I spent many hours surveying the sites, always curious as to what I could find around a corner or through the short door hole of a building. While this park is quite remote, it is one well worth the visit.